Hello, welcome everyone. We're just waiting for attendees to join. It takes a moment for everyone to hop on. So welcome. We really appreciate all of you being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll do introductions in just a moment. I just wanted to have a quick how-to. We do have Spanish interpretation tonight. And so if you would like to switch to the Spanish interpretation channel, you click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Click Spanish, and that will start the Spanish feed. The English feed will be in the background very softly. If you'd like to turn that off, just click that mute original audio and that will turn it off. Unfortunately, if you are on the phone, you won't be able to hear the Spanish translation, so you'll need to use the actual Zoom, the Zoom link and use the Zoom interface to hear Spanish translation. But we are recording it and you will be able to view it later. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to our intro, Rabbi Ted Feldman.
Thank you, Hallie. And I'm getting texts that people are waiting in line to come in. So I may pause just for 30 seconds or so to give time for people to be able to access the webinar. So welcome to Petaluma Community Relations Council, first of 2 City Council candidate forums. The mission of the Petaluma Community Relations Council is to serve as a coalition of individuals and groups, promoting the values of respect, appreciation, and understanding of the diversity among all people in our community. By fostering positive human relations, we identify and confront discrimination, respond to the needs of our community, and serve as a source of information and advocacy. This evening's program is being aired on Zoom, Facebook Live, Petaluma Community Access TV and radio, and will be recorded and available on our Pcrc website after the event. I want to thank the members of the Pcrc Coordinating Committee, Elise Hempel, Rob Tomaszewski, Peggy Sabara, and Carol Barlis, who have worked really hard to make this happen, as well as Hallie Cloud, Devin Castles, Nellie McGee, and Jeff Trier, who helped with the technology, and Ted Keys and Ali Gaylord, who will be hosting this event. It is my pleasure to introduce Ted Keys, a Petaluma resident for over 27 years, raised 2 children who attended Petaluma Public Schools prior to going on to graduate from law school and Yale University, respectively. Member of Petaluma Blacks for Community Development and current Director of Supply Chain for Manzana Products Company, LLC. And now I'll turn it over to Ted. Ted, please.
Thank you very much, Ted. Thank you everyone for attending. Thanks to the candidates for your willingness to serve our community. Tonight's 90-minute program topics were decided by polling the members of Pcrc and will cover the city's general plan and housing with a focus on climate, affordable housing, and planning. Each of the candidates received a summary of the questions raised by Pcrc members prior to this evening. We have asked the candidates to address the Pcrc questions into their responses on tonight's topics. Candidates' presentations will be timed. Follow-up questions will be asked by Ali Gaylord, who is joining me this evening. Ali is a new Petaluma resident who has 15 years of experience in affordable housing. She is currently with Mid-Penn's North Bay Regional Real Estate Development Office, and prior to that was with Bridge Housing. So the first area of questioning tonight, City of Petaluma General Plan. Pcrc members raised many questions and concerns about the City of Petaluma General Plan. Their questions had a focus on climate and equity. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the first question, and Ali will be asking follow-up questions after each candidate has answered. We will be starting in alphabetical order. The first question this evening is, you all are aware the city of Petaluma has begun working on general plan and has been gathering feedback on major issues facing the city. What would you say are the 3 highest priorities, and how would you recommend increasing diversity in the community engagement process? And we will begin with Brian Barnickle.
Ted, thank you everyone. It's exciting to be here and see clear skies. For those of you who don't know me, I'm going to do a little introduction. I'm a 4th generation Petaluman. I grew up on a small farm outside of town, and I am the climate candidate in this race. I have a background in city planning from Cal Poly, and for the last decade, I've worked in the clean energy industry. I know there's a lot of hardship swirling around our community right now and anxiety, but for me, this election really represents, it represents opportunity. And there's no better way to think about opportunity than the update of our general plan. And so when I think about the general plan, my priorities are to address our housing, transportation, and economic issues with sustainable solutions and really build in community resilience at every step of the way so that we can respond to natural disasters and be prepared and support each other as we have over the last several years with fires, as we have with COVID most recently, and as we're going to into the future. Core to that resilience is our community. And so when it comes to increasing diversity in the planning process, let's look to what we've learned from the fires, and that's we need to build relationships with the different groups in our community. We need to make sure that they're well resourced and bring them to the table way of helping to elevate the voices of their constituents. And it's just incredibly important to not let this plan sit on the shelf, and we need to create a citizen task force to oversee it, review it, make sure that we're updating it and incorporating best practices and lessons learned, because we really don't know what we don't know, and that's where a good process and a good review process comes in really handy. And I'll finalize that by saying I've been grappling with a lot of these issues over the last 8 months. I was the lead author on the city's land use and transportation section of the draft climate emergency framework. I've been having candidate for community forums in my campaign on climate, environmental justice, and responsible development. Tomorrow night, I'm meeting with 5 local businesses to talk about the threats and the risks that they're facing and how the city can be a better ally looking towards the future. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Brian Barnickle. The next candidate is Robert Conklin. Robert, you're on mute.
Okay. My name is Robert Conklin. I'm a 4th generation Petaluma kid also. I've lived in this town all my life. This is my home. I'd like to be in leadership to make decisions going for the future. For the general plan, we really can't be passive with the engagement. We have to increase both engagement and awareness. And we need to reach out to the members in the community, whether it's spiritual or leaders that in their neighborhoods, people that are trusted by the community. The engagement has to be accessible in different languages, and we also need to have different ways that people can engage, because if the only way you can engage is during a Zoom meeting, some people don't have the internet, whether it's financially or they just choose not to be on the internet. We need to elect leaders through district-based elections. So those elected leaders could directly represent the communities that they're living in and address the issues that their neighborhoods have. And we just need to, reach out to the community and bring everybody to the table and have discussions with everybody's voice readily able to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert Conklin. And the next candidate to speak is Mike Healy.
And I have one quick request. Sorry, Mike. If people could speak slowly and as clearly as possible for our interpreters, that would be great. Sorry. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Mike Healy. I'm a first-generation Petaluman. I grew up in Santa Rosa, but I'm a fifth-generation Northern Californian. And I just want to quickly respond to one thing Robert said. I strongly disagree on district elections. I think that would be a huge step backwards because each member of the community would only have one council member that would listen to them, as opposed to right now when all 7 of us have to listen to you because we're running citywide. And citywide elections have worked for this community for generations, and I don't really see a compelling need to change. But with respect to the question in terms of the next general plan, I'm probably the only person on this forum who was around when the last general plan was being formulated. And let me tell you one story before I directly respond to the question. And that was that at the time, in the early 2000s, our urban growth boundary was set to expire in 2018. And so our general plan consultants came to the council and said, okay, here's this new general plan that's going to expire in 2025. And the urban growth boundary expires in 2018. And on January 1, 2018 is basically going to be the Oklahoma land rush. And I led the council at that time to say, no, we really like the urban growth boundary where it is. Let's leave it there and let's work within it. And that's what happened. And ultimately that general plan was adopted and the urban growth boundary was extended out another 7 years. So it now expires in 2025. In terms of responding to the question, my top 3 issues for next general plan, I think there's an incredible need to focus on creating affordable housing while staying within our existing urban growth boundary and not sprawling out beyond it after the urban growth boundary expires in 2025. And that's going to be a real challenge given our new RENA numbers. Secondly, I'd say that climate resilience and local efforts to combat climate change are going to be key. And thirdly, I'd say attracting jobs with wages that allow people to work here is going to be key. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike Healy. And the next candidate is Gabe Kearney.
Good evening, and thank you for putting this forum together this evening, and hello to my fellow candidates. It's a pleasure serving on the Petaluma City Council since March of 2011, and hopefully I will be able to return for 4 more years after this November. As far as how do we increase and get more diverse opinions and voices at the table for the next general plan, we need to go and meet the constituents and the residents where they're at in our community and have forums and listening sessions all throughout our community. Hopefully we are able to do that in person so you can better hear and see what people's feelings are when we're talking about the different issues that are going to be part of the general plan. As far as the top 3 issues we have to look at going forward, affordable housing and our housing element of the general plan, transportation, and climate are the top 3 things I think that we need to focus on and are going to be important moving our city forward into the future. I don't think you're going to get many people that are going to disagree on those issues. It's just a matter of getting as many voices as possible in this general plan process to bring the opinions to the table and listen to what the residents have to say and combine their opinions into a general plan that works for our community moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabe Kearney. And the next candidate to speak is Susan Kurtz.
Thank you, Ted. It's an honor to be with you as our moderator this evening. I've heard about you, but this is the first time I've ever kind of met you through Zoom. And I wanted to thank Peggy and Hallie for their incredible coordinating of this forum and all of the work that's gone into this. Mr. Healy brought up an interesting point. I actually was around in the last general plan time period, and I attended every single general plan meeting for our general plan 2025. And I will share with everyone from my experience, it was a bit of a challenge for our public input to be accepted and honored. We basically had to give the same input over and over again. And I'd like to share with those watching that I'm certainly willing to do that and whatever it takes to be sure that our community's voice is heard in this new general plan process that we're beginning. For my top 3 priorities, I would say housing, transportation, economic development, and if I could add one more, our overall environment, which means our integration of our built environment with open spaces and green spaces, and establishing a much better policy and pursuit of funding and acquisition of open spaces and green spaces, including in our affordable housing units and affordable housing development. And in the context for those 3, we must view those priorities and all of our priorities through the lenses of equity. Oh, what's my time up? Sorry.
No, you still have a couple of more.
Thank you. Sorry, equity and climate impacts and climate action. So in that regard, these must be our really top context elements for the priorities that I just mentioned and really that we're all discussing. Climate and equity. And this is what our Climate Action Commission has been doing, and I've attended all of those meetings too. Thanks. Hopefully I'll be able to say more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan Kurtz, for your response. And the next speaker is Kathy Miller.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I am in my 8th year on the Petaluma City Council, and I have lived on Petaluma's east side for the last 20 years. I'm the only current member of the City Council who lives over on the east side of town. The general plan has 8 elements: land use, circulation, housing, conservation, open space, noise, safety, and environmental justice. Climate is interlaid and sort of an overlay of all of those. And I think at this point, everything that we're doing, we have to look through a climate lens. That being said, my top 3 priorities are housing, and specifically affordable housing. And as part of that, obviously transit-oriented development. Circulation, which is traffic. If we're, going to address our climate crisis, we have to make sure that it's easier for our buses and our bicyclists and our pedestrians to get around town. So that's all part of circulation. And the last aspect that I really want to emphasize that I think is really important right now is safety. And what that looks like is how resilient are we in terms of addressing fires and floods and earthquakes and essentially natural disasters. And so I think it's really important. We certainly have had our share of natural disasters over the last 3 years, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon, unfortunately. So I think we really have to make sure that we are addressing, as part of our general plan, safe evacuation routes, things like that are critical. So in terms of answering the question about, diversity in the community engagement process, one of the things that I think we've been really successful with in the last couple of years is holding these big community meetings, and we get on Saturdays, and we get a lot of, am I done?
Yes, excuse me. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the bell at all.
And
Okay.
I apologize. I think I, quite frankly, didn't hear the bell myself, so I will just ask our bell ringer to please try to ring that a little louder if you don't mind.
I will. I was worried that it was actually interrupting people, so I will ring it louder and let it go longer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So perhaps we'll give you a couple of more seconds to finish in that case, if you like, just a couple of seconds.
Well, I just was going to say that, you know, we have to get notice out in English and Spanish. We have to go and meet people where they are. And, you know, hopefully as we begin the general plan process, we can do that. I know that with the last general plan process, I was on the planning commission during that process, and we did hold a lot of public meetings, but not as, you know, not as, you know, not on Saturdays and not as frequently as I think we need to.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And the next speaker, thank you very much, Kathy Miller. And the next speaker is Dennis Posike.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Posike, and I want to thank the Pcrc for getting this together. I believe that our new general plan must have climate change and equity as prime considerations. We should take a conservative approach to our river, its wetlands and flooding, and develop a river management plan. It's not clear to me that we will be required to have an environmental justice component, but we should choose to include one. The state has expanded the definition of environmental justice, and I'm paraphrasing, as fair treatment and meaningful involvement of essentially all people with respect to all policy. We should sign on. My other priority, which I believe is necessary to accomplishing the first two, is changing our zoning ordinances to be more flexible and or less prescriptive in order to allow more modest and affordable by design housing, which will both lower the cost of subsidized affordable housing and improve equity. And I believe that the general plan can never be rigorous enough to withstand a council that does not follow its intent. Increasing diversity in community engagement requires more than just saying the words. It has to be seen as part of the vision for the city. Leaders must be supportive, and everyone involved must be challenged to be aware of all our communities, including renters, seniors, young families, and people of color. We should contact leaders and influencers of our diverse communities to request their help in identifying residents who will commit to both developing and taking part in the process. On a couple other issues, I will find it extremely difficult to grant exceptions to developers related to equity. I would consider whether we should require a unanimous vote of the City Council for such exceptions. And finally, I would employ incentives of any and all kinds to reduce vehicle miles traveled. I'd urge employers to continue to allow employees to work from home. I would incentivize electric vehicles.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and I apologize for interrupting. That's the end of your time. Thank you very much, Dennis Posike. And the next speaker is Lizzie Wallock.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm sorry, just a point of reference. I will ask that our timekeeper do ring the bell, because I think some of our speakers aren't seeing the signage perhaps. And I think it would be great if they actually heard the timing.
Yeah, so I'm doing both.
Okay.
I started doing the visuals because the question about whether they.
I
So I
think
am
the
ringing
visual.
the bell. Is nobody hearing it?
I did not hear it.
Did you hear it, Dennis?
I did not.
I'll make sure you get additional time on your next topic. I apologize. Okay, thank you very much. So we will proceed again. The next speaker is Lizzie Wallock.
Hi there, Lizzie Wallick. Thanks so much for having me, and to you all for organizing and hosting. The three highest priorities for me in the update of our general plan are housing, economic vibrancy, and transportation. When we're talking about housing, I'm talking about green, affordable housing that is woven into our urban fabric, connected to services and transportation. Transportation that moves towards a more bikeable and walkable city, and looking towards a more robust public transportation system. Economic vibrancy. Petaluma must have broad-based and diverse economic activity, including a strong and supported agricultural sector, manufacturing, retail, and professional services. When I think about increasing diversity within our community, bringing it to our council, in order to do that, we increase community engagement when we bring it to the forefront of the public realm. It must be part of what we do at our core. I've been actively engaged in this work in our local school community at McNear Elementary. I've worked in architecture for over 10 years, and and community engagement is one of the most critical parts of any commercial project. I have experience working in partnership with the mayor's office in San Francisco, developing complex community projects that span neighborhoods and require deep partnerships with merchants, associations, and neighborhood associations. I love the positive strength in these relationships. For me, this is the foundation for a successful project when we are all working together and understanding what all of the diverse residents want before pen is ever put to paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, excuse me. Thank you very much, Lizzie Wallock and Ali.
Hi, thanks, Ted. And now I will ask, thank you for all your thoughtful answers. Each of you will have 2 minutes to answer a follow-up question that I ask specifically to you based on your original answer. So we will start with Brian Barnickle. Brian Barnickle, could you please talk more about the specific policies that you would support in the general plan to achieve housing, transit, and economic goals within the climate emergency framework?
Absolutely. On the transportation side, it's a combination of building the right new infrastructure that we need. I'll talk more about that if we want, but really, when we talk about the climate, it's, things like safe routes to schools for me are really important. We used to joke in Petaluma that we had a pothole problem, but that pothole problem is becoming a safety problem, and we need to do something about it. And so when people ask me what the best climate solution is for our transportation issues, safety is one of the top things, because if we make it where parents allow their kids to walk and bike and do things like that, they're going to as well, but also we take trips off the road. From an economy standpoint, it's a fact that, we need to stop looking at just how much sales tax by dollar we get, and we need to look at things like sales tax per acre. Because when we eat up land with big box stores that maybe they produce a lot, but they don't really produce that much per acre. And as a business person, I would never just look at top line revenue. I'm looking at revenue minus costs, and the costs in this case are our land, because we can't ever get it back. So we need to be thinking about, intense retail in certain areas, walkable communities, and really building on that, to create a vibrant, local. I love the idea of a 5-minute community. I think that there's a lot of merit to it, because it opens up zoning regulations to innovative and creative uses. I know my grandfather, when I was talking to him about this, and he's not a studied land use person, but
15 seconds.
Where's all the grocery stores that we used to have when I was a kid? I used to be able to walk and get a gallon of milk while my mom cooked dinner. And we need to bring that back. We need to bring back that local community where where you're buying things, your grocer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. That's 2 minutes.
Thank you. The next question, follow-up, will go to Robert Conklin. Robert Conklin, could you give more detail on your plans to engage with different populations to increase community engagement in the general plan process?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
No problem. Could you please give more detail on your plans to engage with different populations to increase the community engagement for the general plan process?
You would go for places where groups of people congregate. It's tough right now with COVID, but churches, social groups, different, anywhere where there's people that you can go and talk to, and you got to just get out and press the flesh with the local residents. I would go to churches and wherever people are meeting up and that's pretty much it. So I'll end on that one.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Mike Healy. Mike Healy, would you support expanding the urban growth boundary if needed to find adequate sites for affordable housing?
So that would be my last choice. I think the community very much strongly supports keeping the urban growth boundary where it is. That's going to be a challenge, and we might get into this on future questions with respect to the RENA numbers that the city is being given in the next cycle, and the next general plan, of course, will have to cover 2 or 2.5 RENA cycles, because RENA cycles are 8 years and a general plan typically lasts 20. The community very much wants to stay within our urban growth boundary, and that's going to require higher density than what the community has been traditionally used to. I will say, I was the council member that went out and knocked on doors to get a developer for what's now our theater district. And that was a great success. And it introduced the community to a new kind of development that we had not had in this town before. In terms of, vertical mixed use. And I know there's a great desire, certainly on the entire city council at this point, I think in the community, to extend that kind of vertical mixed use and possibly even up to 4 or 5 stories closer to the rail depot downtown. And that's going to be the easy part, quite frankly, because we'll take care of those sites, and then we're still going to have so much.
30 seconds.
We're still going to have so much need for affordable housing. The other challenge is trying to increase the proportion of affordable units above what we've been achieving lately, because, and I'll get more into this later, but affordable housing is extraordinarily expensive to build. And we have limited tools now that the state has taken redevelopment away. So I'll revisit this later. Thank you. But in response to the question, going past the urban growth boundary that exists now until 2025 is my last choice. And I don't want to do that.
Thank you. The next question, follow-up, goes to Gabe Kearney. You raised the environment and transportation, both topics that have been raised by the outreach already conducted by the city. Looking forward, what do you identify as opportunities and challenges for public transit, and what change would you advocate for?
So the opportunities, in my opinion, that we have for public transit are coming along with the development of our second station and reshaping how our current public transit system works in Petaluma. So we have to look, as that station opens, how do we best get people to the stations and increase ridership and make it so that the transit system is consumable to everyone in our community. Early on in my time on the council, we adopted a program to allow for students that are eligible for free or reduced lunch to buy 3-month passes for the bus for $30 as opposed to a $30 monthly pass. Doing innovative programs like that costs the city very little money, and the return as we get more students riding the bus, less cars on the road, and our numbers for the federal funding for transit go up. So it's a win-win across the board, and we need to continue to look at programs like that to help make it so that people look to transit as an option look to our transit system as an option to get from point A to point B in our community. Make it easier for senior citizens and our youth to navigate the system, and bring back the program we had where we had navigators to help people that were first time or users that had not used it previously to better navigate both Petaluma Transit, Golden Gate Transit, and SMART in our regional connections that those offer us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Susan Kurtz. Susan, the Sonoma Marin Fairgrounds will also be undergoing a public process. What challenges and opportunities do you see for that site?
Thanks for that question. It's a centrally located property that has so many opportunities. I would say that the community has shared with us loud and clear that they want the fair to be safe and to stay at the fairgrounds. So I would support finding a way that is workable for both the city of Petaluma and our community for the fair to be there. Having said that, I think because of the central location, there just are a myriad of opportunities, and I do believe that we want to hear from the community in terms of what our 61,000 residents would like to see there. There may be opportunities certainly for affordable housing. There may be opportunities for developing a model for a model system, model area for all kinds of different development capabilities that relate to climate change and the types of development that we're going to be needing to do that are helping to implement our climate action plan. It's potentially a good location to relocate City Hall. And if we did that, we could, in the general plan process, rezone where the City Hall is. Oops, oh, I heard that. Okay, where City Hall is now, and that could also be a site for affordable housing if we rezone that. If we can find the financing, it would be good to be able to have a new police station, or what I like to call community safety, which we'll be discussing later, and a new main fire department, which we've needed for many years, centralizing those those opportunities, and emergency preparedness for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susan. That's time.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Kathy Miller. Kathy Miller, adding affordable housing requires a government subsidy, often from the city, but city funds are limited, even if the revenue measure U passes. How would you bridge this gap to create more affordable housing?
So, you know, we're already working on affordable housing, and the way that we work on affordable housing, since we do not have redevelopment funds anymore, is to, you know, we try and get developers to come in and do affordable housing for us. We have recently changed our in lieu program and now require 15% affordable housing in our developments, which we did not require before. We had it in lieu if you weren't going to do the affordable housing piece. And the in lieu worked all right when we had access to redevelopment funds, because then the city was able to pair with affordable housing developers and get affordable housing units done. Now what we're doing is we're working with providers like PEP and MidPen and Eden Housing to try and get affordable housing developed in our town. And also, you know, we're requiring the developers to do affordable housing. We also work with Sonoma Land Trust for housing that is affordable for first-time homeowners. And so that's another program that we have. So yes, the city does not have a lot of money to pour into affordable housing at this point, but we certainly continue to mandate it in projects and work with developers who do affordable housing to get those projects into town. You know, we're really conscious of the fact that our RENA numbers are going to go up, and we have to.
Thank you, Kathy. The next question. Sorry.
I'm sorry. She has about 15 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I was basically done.
Okay.
I heard the one bell. I didn't hear the second one.
Okay.
And sorry, one more quick reminder, just to speak slowly. I know that audio on Zoom is always an issue, but we really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody,
And I'll
bearing
just
with
say,
us under our Zoom.
And I'll just say from the timer, it's a single bell at 30 seconds and a double bell at the end of time.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Dennis Pcrc. The city inclusionary housing ordinance allows alternative compliance by developers, either donating a portion of the site or off-site property to the city or a nonprofit organization, or payment of an in lieu housing fee, or a combination of these. Do you support the use of these alternatives as a method to create equitable, affordable housing?
I'm sorry, what was the last phrase you used? What kind of affordable housing?
Equitable, affordable housing.
Yes, thanks. I think that the alternative compliance, in the view of many folks in the city, has been overused by the city council. I think that there's probably a place for it, but I think the city comes out on the short end in most of these instances where we have utilized it. I definitely supported going to 15% inclusionary affordable units. And on the other hand, I don't think that is enough to give us all the all the affordable units we're going to need in the sixth cycle of the RENA goals. And I think that we'll need to find other ways to partner again with the nonprofit affordable housing providers to get to where we need to go. I believe that 50% of all new units over the next 5 or more years need to be affordable, and that the city council needs to find funding for those. It's been a long time that we've been in redevelopment. We've had 12 years already to try to come to grips with how we're going to replace redevelopment. And I think it can be done in a variety of ways. I mean, I think we should consider a marijuana dispensary in town. Then we should consider again raising the temporary occupancy tax. And I'm very encouraged to hear that that Sonoma County at least is at a very early stage of beginning discussions on a countywide affordable housing bond issue. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. The last follow-up question goes to Lizzie Wallick. Lizzie, how will you measure success in diversifying participation in the general plan process? Are there any particular populations or groups that you have connections with that you can use to bring in more diversity in the process?
Well, yes, when I think about it, I think about our families that are living here, that want to be working here, that want to raise their children here, and what their struggles are. And I want to hear more about them. That's directly kind of the world that I'm in right now with small children and working. And when I think about community outreach and engagement and getting more involvement, I really think about how we are directly engaging with our community to make it accessible. And I think that there is, there's a lot of questions to be had when we're presenting both information and projects, and how to get feedback and critique from our community. And people process information and learn in many different ways. And I think that as a designer, that's kind of one of the exciting components whenever I'm proposing a project. There's many different modes of representation to have the discussion that hopefully, a diverse community can bite on in some aspect of it. So, when I hope to engage more folks in conversation, it's more folks that are having a hard time affording to live in this town that they're working in. It's our teachers, it's our healthcare workers, it's folks working in our restaurants and in the domestic sector, and it's folks that have their kids in our public schools. So I would love all of those voices to be amplified and come to the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie Wallock. So thank you all for that follow-up answers. The next line of questioning has to do with housing in Petaluma. And the question is, in community polling done, excuse me, I have to turn on my light. In the community polling done by the city on February 15th through the 20th of this year, 75% of those polled and the cost, it said that the cost of housing was an extremely high to verify serious concern. If elected, how do you propose that we address the concern of so many of our residents? You have 2 minutes to respond, and we'll start this answers with Susan Kurtz. I'll turn on some light.
Thank you, Ted. Well, I think we're all hearing tonight that affordable housing is, we have a housing emergency in addition to a climate emergency. And I believe we need leadership of the City Council to transform a process that has been in existence for several years, where we really have not expressed to developers, to landowners, and to the greater Bay Area that affordable housing is our top priority for housing. And we have to begin with leadership to communicate to those who might want the opportunity to develop and build here, to express that this is our top priority. Everyone talks about it, and we honestly need the political will of a unified leadership of our City Council to, in negotiation with developers, advise and be united as a council that this is the leadership we want to give. We want affordable housing. We want transit-oriented development. And this, again, goes back to your first question, Ted, which is related to our general plan process. So this must be a priority within our general plan, and working with the nonprofits like MidPen, I'm just thrilled that they have come into the city of Petaluma, and also integrating the components of our climate action plan, which emphasizes inclusion, equity, and affordable housing. So those are, so we can invite also a more diverse population to come live in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's time. Thank you very much, Susan Kurtz. And the next response is from Kathy Miller.
Thank you. So we are, as a city council and as a member of the city council, doing quite a bit to get affordable housing into our community. As mentioned previously, we've changed our affordable housing requirements, 15% required. In lieu fees are basically gone. They don't work anymore because there's no redevelopment money. We've made it easier to build and permit ADUs and junior ADUs, which are accessible development or accessible dwelling units. We work with the Sonoma Land Trust on affordable housing issues, and you know, we've restricted vacation rentals to keep rental housing available to people. So there are numerous things that I and the rest of the city council have done in the last several years to address our affordable housing issues. The other thing is, you know, as we've talked about this evening, sort of at length, our RENA numbers are going to go up, and we're aware of that. And there are many developments that are coming online that have large affordable housing components, and we have developments coming online that are just affordable housing. An example of that is the PEP development for seniors and veterans on Petaluma Boulevard South. And you know, so we are definitely working on building affordable housing, and you know, I plan to continue to do that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy Miller. And the next respondent is Dennis Posike.
Thank you. I believe housing is a human right and that everyone who works in Petaluma should be able to live here. Our current city council seems to favor developers who want to build market rate single family housing. This causes harm to our environment and increased traffic congestion. We find ourselves saying goodbye to our friends and family because they can't afford to live here. Our city pursues tourism to create jobs and to capture sales tax revenue, but then it fails to provide sufficient affordable housing for the workers who take the low-wage jobs in our shops and restaurants. The current beneficiaries of development in Petaluma seem to be developers, not those who live and work here. If I'm elected to the council, I will be a tireless advocate for developing affordable housing. I will insist that market rate housing be high density and transit oriented, and I will oppose all development in environmentally sensitive areas. In addition, I will work to cap rents and prevent evictions of tenants and homeowners unable to pay their rents and mortgages during our current economic crisis. From everything we've heard, it appears that the RHNA 6 cycle allocations will be two to three times the 5th cycle allocations at all income levels. This could mean more than 1,000 units over 8 years for moderate incomes and below. We'll need to do more to encourage local affordable housing providers who know how to cobble together the financing to build in Petaluma, and we'll need to find funding, at least a few $1 million per year, to leverage state and federal funds for these projects. Additional funds could be raised via a marijuana dispensary, as I said before, or a temporary occupancy tax. And I'm also encouraged again by the mention of Sonoma County beginning discussion of an affordable housing bond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis Posike. And the next speaker is Lizzie Wallick.
Yes, I think that for me, the most straightforward answer is really that we have to prioritize it. And we have to prioritize it in a way where we're embracing it and using it as an extreme opportunity to create amazing buildings and for our community and in our community. And so when we look at what truly is affordable housing, I think it comes down to the question of location of where the housing is. To make housing affordable for lower income, mid-range, lower income, and very low income, we have to look at where the housing is in connectivity to the services that we're providing. Because just to add more housing and say it's affordable, but not have it be connected to public transportation, enjoyable walk paths, bike paths, services needed, that in turn does not make it affordable for the folks that are living in it. So when we're really looking at affordable housing, we're prioritizing transit-centric housing connected directly to services, as I've said before, really woven into our urban fabric. And we have to look at really kind of size and proportion of what we're building, where we're building and how we're building. Affordable housing that is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with a 2-car garage pushed to the outskirts of town is not affordable housing. So I think there's a lot of innovating to be done and a lot of conversation to be had as we think about space occupied and cost of construction and materiality being used.
Thank you very much, Lizzie Wallick. And the next speaker is Brian Barnickle.
All right, thank you. Housing is a really important topic. Right now, you have to make $40 to afford the median rent in Sonoma County. And our project pipeline has 2,200 new units coming in, but we're on pace to build 8 times more market rate housing than what the state says we need, and we'll be lucky if we hit 65% of our affordable goals. You know, we're on track to become a wealthy bedroom community of San Francisco, and redevelopment agencies went away in 2011, and we need to stop using that as an excuse. If we want to, we need to be talking about what we're gonna do, because more of the same is not gonna give us any different results. So we need to be, you know, everybody here and everybody out there should be really asking what's gonna change, because if nothing changes, nothing's gonna change on the ground here. For me, I look to our local housing think tank, Generation Housing, and they put out a very succinct 2-page platform. And I'll just cite a couple of things that resonate with me. One, changing our impact fees so that we shift the profit model for developers so that they want to build the housing, or they make more money by building the type of housing that we need. Number 2, earmark the parcels around our town that qualify for state funds and then aggressively go after them. There's $2 to $5 billion a year that the state puts out for affordable housing, but because we're not building the right type of housing, we don't qualify for a dime of it. I've been a grant writer. I've been in business development and partnerships for 10 years, and I know that we can go after it with the right mentality and being proactive. And, you know, it's just about the mentality. It's about being committed to the people of Petaluma and the needs of Petaluma and the working families, and making sure that we create good jobs in the process, because, you know, I've been endorsed by a bunch of the labor unions because they know that I'm here to create good jobs for working families, keep local jobs, and not farm them out.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's time. And the next speaker on this topic is Robert Conklin.
We need to make our dense, affordable housing units close to public transportation, such as SMART, the SMART station that's projected on the east side. We need to be building dense housing there for the workers to cut down on emissions. And it's surprising how much pollution is created by low-income workers that drive out of town to seek better wages or working conditions. And we need to implement policies that, you know, like Santa Rosa did for paid time off, just to get people off the roads, to keep them closer to home. I'd like to see the unions get involved with the planning for sustainable energy and using the cutting edge technology, because they are the ones that, you know the most about it and can help, make these projects come to fruition, and, also provide a living wage for the workers who are building the houses. And, are the housing units really affordable?
30 seconds.
The people who are building them can't even afford them. We need to somehow come to that, solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your response, Robert Conklin. And the next speaker is Mike Healy.
Thank you. So just to provide some context, Petaluma does have a huge affordable housing challenge. So does the rest of Sonoma County. So does the rest of the North Bay. So does the entire Bay Area. So does coastal California, and in fact, coastal, suburban, and urban West Coast of the United States. So we're not alone here. We face the same challenges. I continue to think that if the state seriously wants us to meet our arena targets, they need to have skin in the game, as they did back in the redevelopment agency. I'm heavily involved with the League of California Cities in terms of going to Sacramento, talking to our legislators. I've served on 3 different League of Cities policy committees over the years. I'm a past president of the North Bay Division of the League of California Cities. And Sacramento's not going to solve this problem by keep passing wiener bills that try to punish local governments for not doing enough. Affordable housing is incredibly, incredibly expensive to build. There's a bunch of reasons for that. It's the lengthy entitlement process. The Trump tariffs on Chinese imports and Canadian lumber are not helping at all. There was an article in Bloomberg yesterday saying that with lumber prices now, the average cost of a new house has gone up by $16,000 in the last year just because of lumber. That's crazy talk. And we have in this town, well, the 15% figure has been mentioned. That's only been available as a tool to us for 2 years now, because prior to 2018, that was illegal because it was illegal for us to require affordable inclusionary in apartments because of a case called Palmer v. Los Angeles. And EB 1505, which became effective January 1, 2018, finally changed that. And we are taking advantage of that. But without a lack of financial resources, achieving 15% affordable on a market rate apartment complex is good for us. That's a good result.
Thank you very much, Mike Healy. And the next speaker on this topic is Gabe Kearney.
Thank you, Ted. So as we look at affordable housing and how we can make housing stock in Petaluma more affordable for all aspects of our community, we do need to factor in the transportation costs, access to food, and what services are available to those folks in addition to the housing. When you currently have apartment inventory of around 1% vacancy rate, it creates a situation in which the apartment complexes are charging outrageous rates for one-bedroom apartments here in Petaluma, around $2,100 a month for some apartment complexes on the east side of town. And so that makes it difficult for families and people that are working in our restaurants and in some of the entry-level jobs, or a student trying to go to college and work here in town to be able to afford to live here. And so we do need to increase the opportunities not only for home ownership, but for our rental units here in our community, looking at how we diversify the inventory and build more condos similar to Brody Ranch, where we have opportunities for housing for single family units, but also condo units that offered a more affordable option, not entirely affordable, but more affordable option for folks who might be looking to buy a home and build equity and start a family here in our community. Making sure that folks who grow up here, like myself and many of the other candidates, can either return here after college or continue to live here like I did into adulthood is something that's important. And so we need to look at, again, the diversity of the stock of housing that we're building, making sure that there's apartments that are being built as well as single family homes to make sure that everyone in Petaluma has an opportunity to housing here in our community. Lastly,
thank you very much for that answer, Gabe. Gabe Kearney, thank you very much. Thank all of you for responding to that first set of questions, and Ali will follow up with additional questions.
Thank you all. So we will do this again. I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, and this will be based on the last two answers that you gave. First, well, I'm getting some feedback. I'm not sure if others are too, but can you just make sure you're on mute if you're not talking? Thank you. The first question will go to Susan Kirk. So you talked about building political will on the council. And political will is definitely necessary to build affordable housing. But how will you direct funding to affordable housing if elected to the city council?
Together with the other city council members who would prioritize the affordable housing emergency that we have here in Petaluma, that's actually the first step. It's not something that I would do individually, but let's just say that elected in November will be candidates who have expressed this as one of the top priorities. For funding, I know that we have really great relationships with MidPen, PEP, and other nonprofits who are excellent at leveraging different sources of funding to be able to have that as their specialty. And so I think that supporting our relationships with the nonprofits who have become established here and others that we actually may not be aware of would be one pathway for seeking funding. I think this has, this is a priority for Governor Newsom, I know, and so seeking and leveraging all sources of state and federal funds that we can. And I do agree with Councilmember Healy about the fact that we're not alone in this. This is a regional problem, it's a statewide problem, it's a national problem. But we have to enter a new paradigm where even though we have challenges for funding, if this is the intent of the City Council, we have to do everything possible to seek funding through our legislative relationships, through available funding sources, federal and state, with our nonprofit partners. And we have to attract developers also who will be able to make profits that they need to make, but will provide what we need to have for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan Kurtz, for that answer. And the next responder is Kathy Miller.
Thank you, Kathy Miller. You talked a lot about the affordability of homeownership and some of the policies that you support to support affordable homeownership in Petaluma. At the beginning of the pandemic in February, according to a recent article in the Press Democrat, the median home price in Sonoma County was about $630,000. Now, 5 months later, it's $740,000. This is great for those who already own homes, but the increasing costs make home ownership much more out of reach for many others. What solutions could Petaluma provide for supporting affordable home ownership?
So I think, you know, clearly we're experiencing, you know, and there was an article in the paper the other day about how people are leaving more populated areas and coming up here and buying homes because they've now been given the opportunity to work remotely and they don't want to live in close quarters with people because of COVID. So that's something that we're definitely experiencing in this county right now. And that's causing the cost of you know, for sale housing to increase. So, you know, we do work with the Housing Land Trust to do affordable ownership housing. And we obviously will continue to do that. But I think one of the things that we have to do is, you know, we have to encourage, as people want to come in and build housing in our town, we have to encourage people to build smaller, more dense housing, which is more affordable. The other issue that we're going to have, quite frankly, with building new housing is, you know, as Councilmember Healy mentioned, the cost of lumber is up. The other thing that we're seeing in building new housing is, as we build new housing during time of COVID, there are COVID protocols that contractors have to follow, and these COVID protocols raise the cost of building housing. So, you know, it's sort of coming at us from all different sides. But the one thing that I will say is what I think we really do have to do is encourage smaller, more dense, you know, home ownership options for people, more condos, more townhomes, smaller single family homes, so that people can, you know, so that we can keep the price point down as best we can and people can afford to buy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Dennis Posake. Dennis, in polling recently, 64% of Petaluma residents felt that homelessness is an extremely and very serious problem. Current funding is focused on a housing first model to rapidly rehouse homeless and underhoused people. However, that model is hard to implement without housing available. What solutions would you recommend to implement this policy?
To me, this is really just the edge of the affordable housing problem in general, where we're at the bottom income level of folks that have generally no income. And so I do like the housing first model. It's not perfect. I think there have been some findings that that it does require some. I think sometimes it's called housing first plus, where you have supports for people in terms of mental health issues or in terms of drug and alcohol situations. Well, let me go to. I think the first thing is, you know, we have to look at it as a continuum. We need shelter, which right now my understanding is that we're able to house at COTS everyone who wants to be housed, although fewer people want to be in a shelter under COVID in this pandemic. But then you move on to transitional housing after that, and then to more permanent housing with or without supports. And so I like to start, you know, if I was elected, with something that I think is a little less expensive than most of the things we might do, but that is absolutely necessary, which is finding a place for 24/7 free parking with security and making this available to folks, because this can be good for someone who needs an emergency shelter, as well as a good option for someone who's afraid to go in a shelter but does have a car or a RV of some sort that they can use. So I think that's the first thing. Beyond that, we need to also provide more transitional housing that's not considered permanent, as well as more permanent housing as well. These are more expensive. I think the first thing I would like to see is we have the 24/7 free parking model, and that we move on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Lizzie Wallick. Lizzie, you mentioned that weaving affordable housing into the urban fabric and locating housing next to transit is important. Is Petaluma's current transit system adequate to support transit-oriented development?
I think that we have a lot of room for improvement. I also think that, you know, our city has changed so drastically over time. And I think that this is a great conversation and argument for, as we approach the update of the general plan, how to design in and build in some inherent flexibility and have that opportunity to both pivot and update when needed in times of environment and building. So I think that really, at this time, we have the opportunity to take a closer look at where people are going and how they're getting there and where they need to be. And I think that the silver lining of being in a pandemic, when everyone has kind of focused on the local and been forced to stay closer, we could really look at the value in that and then plan for future more local focus and growth. And I think that to add that as well, if we start to really highlight this idea of the neighborhood and being able to access services such as schools, jobs, housing, stores, etc., with a smaller footprint that allows us to bike and walk, then we're really getting somewhere. And then I think if we take it a step further on the focus of the local, we then talk about local building and how are we starting to employ our families and people that are living here to start to build these projects locally, and then we further reduce our carbon footprint by not, you know, bringing people in from out of state. So I do think, you know, this is the time we're going to look at it. And I think that while we look at it now and update this general plan, we absolutely need to say, okay, well, how are we going to remain flexible? So in 5 years, if these conditions change and this is no longer working, how can we pivot and update at that time as well?
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Brian Barnickle. Brian, you talked about seeking out sites that qualify for state housing funding. Would you talk about any plans that you may also have to position new affordable housing developments to be advantaged for housing funding from Sonoma County and that further housing policy within Sonoma County as a whole?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I got lost with the county in the positioning.
Sure. So the first part was just to recognize that you had talked about seeking out and acquiring sites that qualify for state housing funding. Similarly, do you have plans where you would seek out and position new affordable housing developments to be advantaged for county housing funding and county policies?
Interesting. So you're talking about taking the same approach that I talked about here locally and applying it out of the county. I haven't spent too much time thinking about county housing. I know there's farm worker housing programs. There's mobile home park housing programs that are for rehabilitating those and focusing on air quality, which right now I think everybody is struggling with air quality in their homes. And so there's definitely programs for that, for rural housing. And I would be an advocate for that. You know, I love what Lizzie said about remaining flexible. I think that, you know, it's important that we're looking at this as a design challenge and a lifestyle challenge. These are people that are inhibiting these buildings. They're not just buildings. And, you know, if there's rural workers, if there's people out in the county that are there, we should be thinking about the lifestyle that they need and how to accommodate that as well. And as city, you know, Rob talked about district elections earlier. You know, the people that live just outside of our city that can't vote here, they pay taxes here and they're community members here. And as a council person, I'd certainly be advocating for what's best for them. So, you know, I think it's high time that we start being a lot more aggressive at going out and getting our tax dollars and putting them to work here, and creating good jobs for people. And, you know, looking at these, looking at our general plan as a thing that needs to work for people, looking at our housing problem as an opportunity, and not talking about all the reasons why we can't do it, but start talking about all the ways we can do it, because that's what's going to solve the problem. It's not just looking at the problems, you know, and all the things that are going against us, but it's looking at the tailwinds that we have, like state programs, like good opportunities for infield near transit. And, you know, I just really, a lot of the things that some of the other speakers, you know, have said resonate with me.
Okay.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Robert Conklin. Robert, you referenced that the people who are constructing housing cannot afford to live in that housing. Do you see any conflicts between the cost to build affordable housing and the prevailing wages that are required to be paid on affordable housing?
There we go. The reason why these projects need to be built with prevailing wage is along with the cost, the extra added cost, is you are bolstering the middle class, the working class, and helping them, you know, better their lives. When, let's say, if it's organized labor, it's not only better wages, it's healthcare, it's a retirement at the end. When you, it does cost a little more, but it's guaranteeing that the workers are getting what they need to have a better life. What also comes with those tradesmen and workers is the training. It's absolutely cutting edge. It's the best of the best. And before you even pick up a hammer, you have hours of schooling and on the job training and recertification courses. So, you know, any project that's going to be built in Petaluma is going to be built to last and built by the highest standards. It's not just slap something up to house people because we have a need. It's going to be something that's going to last and also provide a living wage for those, for the workers who build it. So I think it should be prevailing wage because it just, the money swirls around in the working class, and it shouldn't be, you know, a strictly economics game. It needs to be providing actual living wages for the workers who build it.
Thank you. The next follow-up question goes to Mike Healy. Mike, you mentioned that the cost of affordable housing is linked to policies and, for example, lengthy entitlement processes. Could you talk about policies that you support within Petaluma that would lower costs to build housing?
So we love our development applicants to death in this town. The Sid Commons project, which we can talk about if people want to, but I think it was a great project and I am proud to have supported it, was in the entitlement pipeline for 10 years or more. And you know, there just needs to be some time frames and some certainty in the process. I've been doing this for a while. It's hard to come up with rules that address all the different permutations that can come along. But a quick project in this town is probably 3 years. And that's a real, and there's not certainty at the beginning as to where that's going to end up. So that's a real challenge. Let me just segue to talk about a couple of other things. Homelessness has come up in COTS. One of the things that I'm working on is hoping to help COTS expand its Mary Isaac campus further into our former wastewater site. We leveled a bunch of the old structures out there last year. We're going to be leveling some more. I'd love to see COTS be able to expand its campus to serve more folks there and provide more types of services. And then in terms of housing, I'm a great believer in the law of unintended consequences. And I've heard from
30 seconds.
my colleagues, especially in Healdsburg. Sorry?
According to Merriam-Webster, 1A, the occupation or function of serving an active service. B, employment as a servant entered his service. 2A.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So hearing from my, I love technology, but with my colleagues in Healdsburg and Sonoma, one of my council colleagues in Healdsburg tells me that she's the only person on her block that occupies her house all week long. And the other homes are weekend getaways for people from Marin and San Francisco. I think we haven't seen much of that in Petaluma yet. We very much could, especially on the west side. I would advocate for state policies to discourage that at a tax level, because homes should be available for people to live in full time.
Thank you. And the final follow-up question goes to Gabe Kearney. Gabe, you talked about diversifying housing types. Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, are a solution to diversifying affordable housing. The cost of an ADU is often a barrier to many homeowners. Are there any policies that you would support in Petaluma to make the cost of building an ADU less prohibitive to homeowners?
Thank you. So one of the policies on the city council that I've been supportive of and I've asked staff to look into is creating template pre-approved plans for different folks to use. So that way that lessens the cost, and no offense to anyone in the architecture field, but lowers the cost that is incurred by the architecture fees or any of the engineering costs. So pre-approved, off-the-shelf plans that folks can come in and say, I want to build this, and we already have options available for them so that they can get the project going, and it can save them anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 at minimum. And that would allow for a more affordable option and a faster way for folks to get these units built. And I think that's something that we are already looking into, and I am 100% supportive of. Thank you.
Ted, it's back to you, I believe. Ted, you're on mute.
Thank you, everyone, for answering the questions in that section. Now we're heading into final comments. What I would like to do is give each of you a minute and a half. Each of you a minute and a half to make a final comment on tonight's topics. Each of you will have, again, a minute and a half to make final comments. Prior to doing that, though, and I would like to take the liberty, and I hope our panel and don't mind, there were 4 questions posed by our audience. I would like to read those questions briefly, and each of you would have either the option to answer those or not. At least you will have all heard them, or you could make a final comment in a minute and a half, as you so like, as you please. Those questions are: 1, what specific actions will you take to make our streets safer for cyclists of all ages and abilities? That's one question. Another question, and the question was for Dennis, but it could be for anyone. If a marijuana dispensary is open in town, how will you protect youth from obtaining marijuana? The third question is, will city council members favor making zoning laws more flexible to allow businesses to use vacant spaces in Petaluma? What ideas do they have to reinvigorate downtown with all of the bankrupt businesses? So again, those were 3 questions posed by our audience. Obviously, you are not required to respond to those directly. You may if you so choose. However, each of you have a minute and a half for your final response. And we'll start with Robert Conklin.
I think I guess I'll ask it or answer a couple of them. The marijuana dispensary, I think we should get with the times. We need to definitely bring in the tax revenue and give people some, people use it for medicine. How are we going to protect the children? I think it needs to be definitely specifically zoned for, industrial commercial areas with, kind of going along the guidelines of ABC. I think that's one of the things that we can generate some taxes and get the city on board with what's going on in Sonoma County. And the cannabis industry is blooming, no pun intended, and I think we should embrace it and
30 seconds.
It's 30 seconds. Oh, okay. Is this final comment too?
Correct.
Okay. I just being from the working class, I feel that sitting at the table and pulling my resources of people I know in the building trades and construction industry could definitely bring some insight on how we can build stuff more affordably and beneficial for the working class families of Petaluma. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And let me just reiterate, I read those 3 questions. You're not required to respond to them. It's out of respect of our audience and at least making sure that they were being heard. Your 90 seconds here at the end are for your final comments. However, you can also reply to any of those questions that you so choose. The next respondent is Mike Healy.
Thank you for that. And thank you again for the group for sponsoring this tonight. Let me respond briefly to a couple of the questions. First, on the marijuana issue, I supported delivery only. I think that's working for us. I think the communities that were expecting enormous amounts of revenue coming in from storefronts have been sorely disappointed. And I would like to continue with the model we have until there's need to change it. I think as part of our new general plan process and the new housing element process, we're going to be looking at vacant and underutilized commercial properties throughout the community to see where there are opportunities to rezone either for mixed use or for residential uses. With respect to the downtown storefronts, I think that's been hammered by COVID. We hope that's going away. We know Amazon is not going away. I think we're going to have to pay particular attention to keeping the downtown vibrant. We don't need more retail in this town, again, because of Amazon. But I think with the dredging, that's going to help. And on climate change, there's one thing you're going to be reading about in this Thursday's Argus Courier that I'm very excited about, and that's a proposal for a 400 megawatt hour battery storage facility in town that would vastly improve our region's ability to deploy further solar photovoltaics, because at this point it's a challenge to operate an electric grid around the increasing amount of solar that we have. And we all want to increase solar further, but we're not going to be able to do that without battery storage. And so I'm very hopeful that this proposal can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Healy, and the next respondent is Lizzie Wallick.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. And for those questions, I'm excited to respond to them, and I'm going to do so in Instagram and Facebook stories tomorrow. And if anybody has any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, LizzieWallock.com. Representation matters. We need fresh, new, and diverse voices in our city government. The next 4 years will define the future of Petaluma. A vote for me is a vote for a future where the best of Petaluma shines, with a thriving downtown, low-income families, with a thriving downtown, equitable housing, and a healthy city for all of our children to grow in. A vote for me is a vote that will open doors to increase financial stability for people who have been left out, helping families, especially working, low-income families with housing needs and open pathways for their children to thrive. I will bring dedication, love, and compassion for our city and community, along with over a decade of my career in architecture and my personal life as a mother of 2 young children. I will tackle our issues and lead with both my professional experience and my heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lizzie Wallock. And the next respondent is Gabe Kearney.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate the opportunity to present my views to the voters and the residents of our community. Thank you to the Petaluma Community Relations Council for this opportunity and for the next forum in the coming future. As far as how do we make sure that marijuana is not getting to our children, if we were to allow for storefront dispensaries, we should look at zoning and making sure that they are in appropriate places away from schools and recreational activities for our youth. I think it's something that we can look into doing. It's not going to be the end-all be-all cure for our community. It's only going to generate about $400,000, but that's $400,000 that is sorely needed in our community that we do need to be bringing in to ensure that we have safe streets and a safe community for all the residents that are here, and we can move forward with a safe community that welcomes everyone to the table. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you and the rest of our community further at future forums. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabe Kearney. And the next speaker is Susan Kurtz.
Thank you. I was muted. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Community Relations Council, all your members, all of the people who are watching this evening, to our interpreter and translator, which I know must have been very challenging. I'm not sure how many of us remembered to speak slowly and clearly. And so I am really honored to be among the candidates and the incumbents who are participating this evening. I have lived in Petaluma for 20 years, and I lead 2 nonprofit organizations, one based in Petaluma and one county-wide, with strong environmental and conservation records here in Petaluma and in the Bay Area. And this evening we were talking about the general plan and transportation and what our views about housing are. We are at a turning point here in Petaluma and with our national election. And I would like to encourage our voters to consider that we can be productive, we can be motivated, we can have a unified city council with strong intent to serve the citizens of our community. And I have a lot of experience here in Petaluma and care deeply about our community. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to enter the election effort. And I'd like to ask people to visit my website, susankirkspetaluma.com, and look forward to our next forum. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Susan. And the next respondent is Kathy Miller.
So I feel like some of the other candidates have answered a couple of the questions that the community had, but no one has really answered the question about making Petaluma safe for cyclists of all ages and abilities. And so I did want to answer that question briefly. You know, we are doing quite a bit with safe streets. We have added multi-use trails and repaired multi-use trails. We're doing some work on the Lynch Creek Trail. So we really are working in Petaluma to make bicycling safer for not just people who are really comfortable on a bike, but kids and seniors. And one of the things that I think is really important that we do going forward, and I've advocated this for years and will continue to do so, is that we make it easier to bike around town, and we make it easier to bike around town with multi-use paths rather than and protected bike lanes rather than doing it with just riding on Lakeville, which is a little scary. So thank you very much to the Petaluma Community Relations Council for holding this forum. I appreciate being invited. I look forward to future forums and to interacting with the community going forward. And thank you very much for everyone's time this evening and attendance.
Thank you very much, Kathy Miller. And the next respondent is Dennis Posike.
Thank you. Let me just, well, first thank PCRC and everyone affiliated with them who worked on this for having the forum. I'd also like to thank everyone who attended and to ask you to go to my website for more on my positions and endorsements, including our Congressman, Jared Huffman. I'm grounded and active in this community, and people know me, and I know the people in organizations that are doing good work. I know how to bring people together, and I promise that if you elect me to council, I promise to do just that. And while experience does have value, it also means you have a track record. Failure to address our affordable housing crisis, for example, to me demonstrates some lack of commitment to affordable housing. The current presidential race is a stark reminder that values matter. As a husband, parent, physician, educator, and community volunteer, I've demonstrated my commitment to transparency, respect, fairness, and community. When I say that we're all in this together, I mean it. When I say that everyone who works in Petaluma should be able to live here, I mean it. And when I say we need to be leaders in responding to the climate emergency, I mean it. When you mark your ballot, please vote for a candidate who reflects your values. Vote for me, please. Dennis Posike for City Council.
Thank you very much, Dennis Posike. And the next and final respondent in this category is Brian Barnickle.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Close this down. I want to again thank PCRC. I want to thank my campaign team. I want to thank my wife, lovely wife Gretchen, and everybody who's out there watching. Right now is a difficult time for everybody in our communities, but this, again, I want to remind everybody that this campaign is full of hope. Experience does matter, but you need to learn from it, and you need to evolve your philosophies. And we've got a lot at stake in this election. Our cost of living is too high. Our housing is hardly affordable. Our transportation problems are tough. Development happening all around us, and our infrastructure is not keeping up. We've got our general plan update underway, which is a huge opportunity for us to have a vision and enact a vision that is forward-looking and feasible. And we've got the future of our fairgrounds. We've got wildfires and COVID that continue to hamper us all. I've been saying that I am running to keep us true to our roots and not be stuck in the past. When I say that, I'm protecting our farms, our open spaces, our hardworking people that live in Petaluma. But I know that we can do that, and we can be climate leaders. I am the climate candidate here. I know that we can make this stuff work. I know that we can enact bold visions to address our social justice issues. I know that we can have our cake and eat it too. These are not mutually exclusive things. I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you so much. Good night. Stay healthy. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Brian Barnickle. And thank you to all of the candidates. I would like to thank all of the candidates and our community for joining us this evening. I encourage you to reach out and speak to any of the candidates if you would like to discuss any of the topics covered. I also would like to remind everyone that PCRC will host a second forum on September 29th at 4:30 p.m. The topics will be governance and the city budget. A recording of tonight's meeting will be available on PCRC Facebook page. I want to thank Ali Gaylord and everyone who helped to make this event a success. Thank you very much. Thank all of you very much for attending and participating in this forum. And we look forward to seeing you at the next forum.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.